welcome to Page by Page. Page by Page is a bi-monthly interview series that focuses on craft and things related to writing and being a writer. The topic for tonight is the art of memoir, writing about trauma, healing, and all the stuff in between. We will begin with a short reading, launch into the interview portion, and leave time at the end for questions. I'm really excited to introduce Spike right now. Spike Gillespie is a critically acclaimed author of many books and countless magazine articles. Austin Chronicle readers voted her best memoirist in Austin in 2016, in 2017, and possibly 2018.
Vote for Pedro. Vote for Spike.
She writes the blogs emotionalrapesurvivor.com and meditationkicksass.com. Spike's work has appeared in the New York Times Magazine and the New York Times, the Washington Post, Real Simple, GQ, Esquire, and other publications. Please join me in welcoming Spike Gillespie.
Thank you, Julie. Thank you, everybody. Maybe I'll just move to stand here. I'm still eating a cookie. 5 minutes, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Sometimes I purposefully don't prepare for a reading. Tonight, without going too far into it yet, I've been really sidetracked by some personal tragedies in my life, as well as some national tragedies affecting all of us. So I really didn't prepare. And as I was jumping out of my truck, I realized that I recently ordered self-indulgently some copies of my first book, All the Wrong Men and One Perfect Boy, which I haven't read from in probably 20 years. So I'm just going to open it up and read from it. I do have a new book, The Tao of Bob, which you get here at Malvern Books. Oh, I'm going to use up my whole 5 minutes just like talking instead of reading. I want to thank Malvern Books. This is a fantastic bookstore. If you have not been here, please check it out for yourself. If you have been here, please come back. I actually performed a wedding on this very spot. Did you know that? I performed a wedding right in this room. I perform weddings everywhere. But anyway, so I'm just going to open All the Wrong Men up. I have no idea how it's held up over time. And let's see. Well, I want to read the opening quote. What do you call that quote at the beginning?
The epigraph.
Epigraph, right, thank you. I should know that. No, don't ask me to apologize. I won't ask you to forgive me. If I'm going to go down, you're going to come with me. And that's Elvis Costello from the song Hand in Hand. So, chapter 1. Let's see how long chapter 1 is. Oh, it's not so long. This is called New Jersey. Twice in my life, my father reached out to me. The third time, I ducked. No, wait, that can't be right, because I have seen for myself an 8mm film where he is, right there, making contact at least one other time. The sort of contact he did not dole out regularly or willingly the way I imagine other fathers did. When I imagine other fathers, of what it would have been like if casual touches, spontaneous hugs. I did not receive these things. Some children suffer the pain of wrong touch, incestuous touch, violent touch. In my family, though, it was a given that we did not touch, as if this were weakness or unnecessary, inappropriate. He is holding me as we ride the merry-go-round on the boardwalk in Wildwood, New Jersey. We are both grimacing, but maybe it's just the sun hitting our eyes. After all, I'm only a baby. Or maybe we are already angry with each other. Maybe this film is some sort of prophecy of how things will be forevermore. Us going round and round, eyes squinting, discomfort obvious to anyone who views us, right up until this very day. We never liked each other much, and I am convinced now he does not love me, never did. This is not a complaint, not anymore. I'm too old for that now. This is merely my observation looking back, searching for one bit of happy comfort felt in his presence. Search as I will, I can find none. I have a remarkable memory. It startles people. Be careful what you tell me, I joke when friends start talking. I can recall phone numbers of people I haven't spoken to in 10 years, birthdays of ex-boyfriends and relatives I haven't seen in forever. I can quote others on things they have forgotten saying ages ago. It's a gift, it's a curse. Family members have told me again and again that I exaggerate, that it can't be the way I remember it. They tell me I am too harsh in my recollection of my father, that of course he loved me. My mother always says, he does love you. He always did, in his own way. I know better. It is 3 decades plus past that baby me frowning on the carousel. Near 2 decades since the first time he touched me. A decade and a half since the second and final time we connected. The last time he tried, even that, is fully 10 years gone now. But that moment is still fresh in my mind, in this memory of mine, like a photograph. They think I cling to this story of our mutual disgust for one another so that I can walk the world full of self-pity. They think I hang on to this thing they call myth so I can have someone else to blame for what I've done. They cannot understand how much I want to see it the way they do, to believe them when they say I'm giving it all too much weight. Photographs. There must be photographs. I look for proof sometimes, search for hard copies of the past, hoping to discover that I made up every last bit of my version. But there isn't any candid documentation of my father touching me. Why can't I find it? The movies don't count. You see, my mother always hated being in front of her little brownie camera as it whirred away, collecting snippets of our lives in 5-minute chunks that flickered later on the screen, unfurled in the family room. She loved to record our lives, our outings to the park, our trips to the shore, but she herself is barely ever there, at most convinced to wave for a second or two before she retrieves the camera from Daddy and resumes her invisible position in the background. He only held me up for these moving pictures because I was too little to stand or even sit by myself. The films are silent, but I can almost hear her telling my father to go and hold this baby, to pose for her record. A little over a year ago, my mother sent me my folder. This is a ritual she performs whenever one of her 9 children marries. Birth certificate, first lock of hair, old report cards, and photographs culled from her endless shoeboxes full of them. A few months ago, I dug out my folder. I had to see something. Something nagged at me. He touched me more than twice, and somewhere there was proof. I recall a picture of me on the day of my first communion, again wincing into the sun, in the lily white dress my mother had lovingly sewn for me, with a crown of fake daisies in my hair. I never was good at posing, at pretending to enjoy the falseness of pictures, of memories staged. I remembered something else besides the statue of the Virgin behind me in the front garden. I remember my father standing beside me. I think he's wearing a black jacket. I think he is touching me. Or maybe he's not. Maybe there's a distance between us, literally inches, metaphorically miles. I have to know for sure. I have to see this picture again. Did he actually touch me more than twice of his own accord? When I go to my folder, I cannot locate this picture of Daddy and me. There is one of me on that day in that dress posed before that statue. The fake daisies are there too. My memory is as accurate as ever, except for one thing: no Daddy. As it is now and was from the beginning, he lives but is not present. He is gone from me now. He was gone from me then. I am standing alone. I know that somewhere the other picture really exists. It must be in the files still. My mother's files, her memories. We remember things differently, she and I. She probably remembers his arm draped across my shoulders, and in her viewfinder, he is proud as can be. I am thinking if his arm is there, it is for her sake, not mine, and certainly not his. I hear him, eager to move, urging her to take the picture already. I have spent my whole life trying to rearrange the vision of him and me in my mind. I have created fantasies in which we are hugging and laughing, and he is really, truly glad to have his arm around me. And later, much later, I tried to recreate these fantasies by proxy as I let the arms of one man or another drape around me, hold me, have me for a night, a week, sometimes years too long. It is the simplest of psychologies, embarrassing to me now that I understand it. Reject the daughter, and she will search for you elsewhere. She will spend forever, kill herself if need be, looking for love. I did not spend forever. I am not dead. I did not find that love in another man, but unbelievably I found it anyway in a child, my son. I learned from him the greatest joy and the greatest pain. I discovered once and for all that my memory was right. Daddy did not love me, not the right way. He did not hold me as I hold my son. He did not listen as I listen to my son. He must have had his reasons. I do not know what they are. He will never say. It has been years since he has spoken to me. I am lost to him, and he is to me. I have stumbled through a world of men, searching for 34 years now, trying to come up with the perfect picture. I have failed in that regard. But somehow, oddly, surprising my own self, I have managed to create a different kind of picture. Something avant-garde, something happy even. It is hard to say. But I no longer wince. I look right into the camera. Sometimes I smile. Oh, thank you. It's all your fault. It was so wild, I mean, to me that I just randomly grabbed that passage. It seems kind of fitting, doesn't it?
I agree with you that it seems to be.
So, okay, can everybody see us? Can you guys see us? Okay, you're going to have to shout, because I know you're not a shouter, but I'm going to request that you shout.
Oh, yeah. I have problems projecting, so I'm working
It's not
on
a
that.
problem. It's not a problem. I just over-project.
So I'll just launch into this. So I've divided this interview into kind of 3 segments. I've started with kind of a chat about trauma and that, and then into healing, and then all the stuff in between. But I'm going to start with the tough stuff. And my first question is, I heard you once laughingly call yourself the Nick Cave of trauma.
Yes.
Why is it important to write about those darkest life moments for you?
Well, first of all, I love to over-explain this. You already know this about me. But I call myself the Nick Cave of Trauma because Insight Timer, which is a really popular meditation app, has contacted me and asked me to create some online courses for them. And we were throwing topics around, and they said, no one has really ever covered the dark stuff for us. And I said, well, I'm the Nick Cave of Trauma. So that's how that came to be. Why is it important? I have developed theories or done some self-examination over the years, and I think for me, it was really subconscious at first. But I started writing like at length, as soon as I learned the alphabet and could hold a pencil. And in the house where I grew up, I mean, some people would call it home, but I'll call it the house where I grew up, we were not allowed to speak. I mean that quite literally. We weren't allowed to speak whenever my father was home. Fortunately, he worked a lot. But you couldn't make a noise. You certainly could not initiate a conversation. And so, looking back now, I feel like the reason I started writing is because that was a place to have a voice. It was quiet. It wasn't quiet in my head. It wasn't quiet on the page. But I wasn't getting busted for it. So I'm putting all these thoughts down. And then I have come to find out or believe, not just through my writing, but through memoir writing workshops, through reading tons of memoirs, and through the research of Jamie Pennebaker, who's got an amazing body of research, that writing through the trauma or writing down the trauma very often has this alchemical effect that's quite healing. And I'm certainly not fully healed, and I don't suppose I ever will be, but to try to think how I might be if I didn't have that outlet, whoa, I would be like super, super fucked up. I know I'm just like super fucked up. So it removes one of the supers. So I think, I hope we have freedom of speech here. Yes. Okay, good. So yeah, I think writing about the trauma is so important, and gosh, man, we could talk for hours. I'm thinking about everything that went down this week in the Senate, and Christine Blasey Ford's testimony has inspired bazillions of women, men also, but women especially. They're writing their stories now. Look on social media. People are writing their most profound, traumatic experiences, and I think that there's a collective healing that's going to take place. Once we're all done, like, once we can all leave our rooms again.
Yeah, people aren't waiting to write their memoir. They're writing posts that are 2 or 3 paragraphs long that really say a lot.
I mean, a lot of
Yeah.
graphic shit is coming out
Yeah.
now. Yeah.
I wonder about that. For me, I'm also working on a memoir about mental health issues, and I sometimes wonder, like when I'm in the deepest, darkest part of the woods, whether or not writing about these issues is re-traumatizing myself in some way, and bringing up things that I'm actually not quite ready to confront, or sometimes it's too late. Sometimes you're already,
yes.
you're already like, I mean, I will be completely honest. I know that you probably had this experience of just writing and weeping,
Yes.
and that to me is like, oh gosh, I don't want this to be the experience, but sometimes it just happens, and so I hear about people writing about their experience of writing about any traumatic experience. And the words that come up are exhausting, scary, grueling, depressing, all these words. And I'm wondering what you do when you discover that something is like reenacting a trauma for you. Like,
So
do you
I'll
back
just.
away? Do you go into it?
Well, okay, so the fabulous thing about having PTSD, which I have, really have it, is I have an ability to dissociate. I mean, I say an ability. I think I did it, as a kid. But now, when I'm in a traumatic situation, I can sometimes, as it's happening, the wall goes up. And I say that's a superpower in a good way, because when I'm doing things like, I preside over a lot of funerals and memorial services, or another superpower I have is many times in my life, right when somebody was about to kill themselves, well, like maybe not many, quite a few times, I'll get a phone call, like, hey, I'm going to kill myself. And I can set aside whatever appropriate feelings one should have when one hears that sentence, and just go into like, all right, what do we need to get done here? So along those lines, when I'm writing traumatic stuff, one of two things, or maybe they're both going on simultaneously, is even though I can write very emotionally and deliver the emotional impact that I felt when it was happening, it's already happened. I've already gone through it. I have a trauma therapist that I see all the time. So that it's weird. It's like I'm writing it. I know it's a real bummer, but I'm a little bit safe from it. Now here's the hard part for me. When I go back and have to reread it, and I revised the Dallas Bob like 80 billion times, and I wrote that book really fast. I wrote it like almost in real time. That was traumatizing. And then I'm adapting it for a screenplay, and so this summer, and I'm working with a collaborator. So this summer, when we were prepping to write the screenplay, we went through all these steps. There's all these steps. We read the books, we sat down, we wrote the plot line, all this stuff. But the one piece that I really didn't want to do was I did not want to reread that book. There's a lot of light and happiness in it, but there's a lot of extreme trauma. And I just wanted that book to be a lockbox of those things that happened to me. I didn't want to go back in there. Excuse me, and I made myself do it. It turns out that even though it was very disturbing for me, I got through it okay. And there's I want to throw one other thing at you, which is Jamie Pennebaker, whose work I reference a lot. He, far more eloquently than I'm about to say it, he talks about how if you're journaling or memoir writing a traumatic event in your life, it's up to you to kind of try to sense, is this re-injuring me? And I liken it when I'm in workshop to, you have a yoga teacher. Once I did a NIA class, a friend of mine was a NIA teacher, and teachers are like, well, you just have to know where your edge is. Just take it to your edge and don't go any further. But sometimes you don't know you've hit the edge until you hear like a tendon snap or pop or whatever, and you're like, oh. That's the thing with writing. You might wind up plunging yourself back into the darkness. I feel like through many, 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 many years of practice, I kind of know where my edge is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that trial by error.
Yeah, you know what? I mean, maybe I'm just throwing this out there, but for me, I mean, I quit drinking like nearly 20 years ago, but that means that for another 20 years or more, I drank when I wrote, and I don't advise it. Put the whiskey bottle down. I don't advise it, but I feel like maybe that kind of was a tool. I don't want to call it a tool because tool sounds like a positive. It's a wrong tool. But I do write a lot of traumatic stuff, and now I can sit down and write the worst things that have happened to me, and the Tao of Bob. That's what's in there, in addition to the good stuff. I don't know, I can just do it and I'm okay.
So you're talking about revision being kind of another re-triggering point. Is that because the critic kind of rears up, or is it something else? I mean, because that is an issue, for me at least, is going back and rereading and seeing the part that I wrote when I was weeping and realizing that it's actually not what I thought it was.
Oh.
Like that emotion was too much for that moment, you know, or it's something about the passage that I wrote isn't actually working, or you know that just.
And that makes you cry in another way.
Yeah, another way. Yeah, like they're wanting to trust your instincts, but also wanting the book to be good. Real good.
And that's the thing too, it's like, so like the difference between journal writing and memoir writing is we do this, there's this stylization that is necessary. Although many people tell me, they say, and I know they actually mean this in a really nice way, they say, you write like you talk. I mean, I do, it's almost like I'm just taking dictation head to fingers, so that's okay. But it's not like, Wallace Stegner is so, I always use him as an example. I love Wallace Stegner. And I know he did fiction, but just like it's not extremely stylized. I've already forgotten the question, sorry, but it's I do and I don't wish that I could have, I don't know, this meta camera or this computing system that could somehow explain to me the process and what the hard parts were and what the harder parts were. All I can really remember is revising that book was traumatizing. It was traumatizing as a writer because there were redundancies in there. And then I got to this part where I started noticing I do a lot of word repetition. I think many of us do. Many of us, we all have kind of a set vocabulary. And then sometimes I'll get hooked on like a word that we talked about this in workshop once. It was like, I think the word was like turgid. You get to use that once in your entire writing career. And I did not use turgid in the Tao Bob, but like, I'm like a little kid. I grew up blue collar, not the greatest education. And if I learned a word like exacerbate, oh my gosh, well, I'll just drop that in. Penultimate, like I'll drop it in a lot. It feels awkward in the first usage. And then I'd go to revise and I'd see some of these words show up multiple times, and then I'd panic, and then I'd use a thesaurus, and then I'd be like, am I cheating to use a thesaurus? And then I'd wonder, well, did I replace this word with a different word, but that I used that word 8 times? It was this weird head game that I felt like I was playing like I hadn't before. And a way funnier version of what I just said is there's a Kids in the Hall skit that uses the word ascertain. Have any of you seen that? Mm-hmm. Just look it up. I'm not even going to try to describe a Kids in the Hall skit. It was great. And ascertain is your keyword.
Well, I think that it's amazing that you mentioned meditation. You've been meditating for how many years now?
20.
20. Okay. I think this is kind of along the same lines of the questions I've been asking already. But do you ever fear that writing about these traumatic instances in your childhood or even a year ago, that's keeping you stuck in the past? Meditation is like, from what I'm learning, it's very present focused, and that's the point, is to be aware of where you are in that moment. And so, yeah.
So I read a study recently, and I read studies all the time. I love studies. I also know a lot of studies, like a study will come out, and then 10 years later, it'll be, debunked. So who knows? We can only work with what we have. But I read about a study recently where it said that actually, if you're meditating like a lot, you can be really rutting out those neural pathways instead of freeing yourself from being in the moment. And I was bummed out that I read that article recently because, so in the Dial of Bob is two stories. I mean, it's one big story, but on the one hand, we have Bob, he was nearly 88 when he moved in. And he just changed my life in a really great way. And then there was Darth. I don't call him Darth in the book. I call him Darth now. But he was this abusive guy I was involved with who was abusive on every single possible level. And I remember after he ironically dumped me, because, whatever, I'm a slow learner. But in the aftermath of that breakup, I usually just meditate 20 minutes every morning. Like I get up, I have a real solid routine. I drink my espresso, I let the dogs out. I had the coffee before I let the dogs out. I feed the cow, I meditate, and then I feed the cows, and the horses. That's what I do. So, but after the breakup, I would meditate an hour or 2 hours, or sometimes even more each day, because I was just I was in such crippling pain. I was haunted by suicidal ideation. I was a wreck, and I thought, well, this meditation will get me present focus. But I also have PTSD, so what would happen is I would get a loop going in my mind of him. I found out that he cheated, and so I have a loop in my mind of him with this other woman, or whatever, him hitting me. And so, just based on the study that I read about, I think, I wonder if I did more damage than good by beefing up my meditation. Whether that's true or not, I don't know, but it's certainly, the article was a handy excuse for me to only meditate 20 minutes a day.
Yeah.
20 minutes is plenty. 25 minutes is good,
So is meditation a way that you can prepare for those really, you meditate and then you have a writing practice later on?
Right, meditation has to come first every day, and the rare times it doesn't come first, I feel like I pay for it. I mean, partly it's an OCD thing, and I have, every time I start listing all the letters of the syndromes I have, I think my friend Jacob said to me so many years ago, he's like, you have all the things. I'm like, I do have all the things, but to me it all is under the umbrella of PTSD, right? So the OCD, it kind of fits in there. And maybe some superstition too. And just as a practical matter, if I don't meditate first thing in the morning, that's one of those things, just like you're saying, well, I'm going to get these tasks done and then I'm going to read because I love reading, and then that's going to be a reward. I'm reward yourself first. Read first thing in the morning. I got up this morning at 6 o'clock to read because I knew I had a really busy day, and I knew if I didn't do some self-care that my head was going to implode. So I got up at 6 o'clock and read and meditated. Yeah. So does it? I think you asked a question
I think
does
that
it help?
makes sense. Yeah. I mean, I'm just asking how do you prepare to go into the trenches? If you know that on your schedule for that day you're going to be writing X, Y, and Z, you're going to be working on something. Do you consciously think about things you can do beforehand or afterward that'll make that experience a little bit more bearable?
For me, that it's not so emotionally difficult. I mean, I feel like I'm talking out both sides of my mouth because I said this book was hard, but it was harder to revise and to read than to write the first time. For me, one of the biggest challenges is scheduling. Okay, so I'll give an example. I had designated a lot of hours this week that we're just wrapping up. What is it, Saturday? To work on the screenplay, because we've got the first draft done, we've got the second, we're midway into the second draft, and then what happened is I was asked to, I have 3 funerals to do in addition to the weddings I do, and when you're preparing to do a funeral or a memorial service, very often you got to move very quickly. You need to interview 5 to 10 family members. And it's not wedding clients will book me 6 months, a year and a half out. So I can say to a wedding client, hey, sorry, I'll get back to you in 2 or 3 days. I can't say that to a funeral client. So I had to scrap all my personal writing time this week, and I'm okay with that. But to me, like, the biggest obstacle is time management is really hard. Even though I preach it like in workshop and stuff, it is very difficult to, and I like to have, ideally, like a dream day is, I don't know, 6 to 8 hours to write. That happens about once every 5 years.
Yeah. And you've written more than one memoir, so you have like this, you have it down. How long do you notice that certain projects just take wildly longer or wildly shorter amounts of time?
Well, this is the thing about me, and I'm not saying that it always serves me well. I write really, really fast. I have had a sense of urgency my whole life, and I think some of that relates to a traumatic childhood. Like I'm extremely anticipatory, which is rooted in, okay, this man, my father, I put it in quotes, is going to come home, right? So if I need to anticipate, like, how enraged is he going to be? What is he going to be enraged about? And what kind of, preemptive strike damage control can I do? And I think that informs pretty much every area of my life. So being anticipatory and being like ready to pounce, and then there are other factors in why I write so fast. I just love to get shit done. I like that sense of completion, that instant gratitude. That's the addict. I have that too. I'm an addict
well, and
too.
also you're a journalist too.
I'm a journalist too, so I learned how to write on a deadline. I'm really write on a deadline. And then also I think being a single mom super played into that too, because it's like, I don't have time to like rent an ivory tower and weave a ladder out of my hair and throw it up and climb into the ivory tower and just like, polish my keyboard. I had to fucking get shit done. I had to feed my kid, and maybe sometimes I would augment my income by waiting on tables or bartending. I didn't have the luxury of like time, right? So I learned, but I do think the daily journalism was a big factor. So I pounded out. The Tao of Bob, I started writing that, I think, in August last year, and I think I finished the final draft on March 18th. So.
You mentioned you started your day reading. That was a really enjoyable activity. When you're reading a memoir that's been published, what might make you stop reading that particular memoir or think, oh, this person did not make the right choices?
Oh, I thought you meant like, because one of my dogs shit in the house. I thought you meant like what interruption reading.
Like,
you mean like,
yes.
Why would I throw the book across the room?
Yes, why would you be like, this, whatever this memoirist is doing, this is the wrong path.
So I used to have this thing where, like, if you're going to start it, it's kind of that sense of urgency thing, then you need to finish it. And now I think I'm past the halfway point. I'm 54. I don't want to be 108, So I try to be, more discerning, or be willing to, like, set the book aside, right? So I'm trying to think, oh gosh, I'm just trying to think of, like, a book that maybe so there's this one book, and I don't want to name it, because I've been a theater critic in Austin. I don't like being a critic. I don't like being criticized. I know some people say that makes Austin very provincial, and that we need more critics to make better art, whatever. I think many, many, many people, the work they produce is truly the best that they are capable of at that time. Doesn't mean you're going to like it, doesn't mean it's good, but I don't think people are like, I'm just going to toss this shit out there. I do that sometimes, like if I'm writing on a deadline. So I'm thinking of this book that I read years ago, and I think it did pretty well, and it just fucking infuriated me. I think I did finish it, and I wrote a really long, extremely mean blog post about it, and the woman probably didn't care. Maybe she didn't care. Maybe she never saw it on my little blog with 10 readers. I don't know. But
so what was it about?
Okay, gotcha. I don't want to tell you what it's about because you'll know what it is. I'll be broad about it. Okay, so now these days we have like mommy bloggers galore. Even though I just used the word daddy in this book, the words mommy and daddy really creep me out. Except when I'm talking to my dogs, I will say mommy is home. But that's just between me and the dogs, right? So they don't seem to mind, and it's just a weird thing I do.
Yeah.
Okay, but other than that, but so mommy bloggers, if not where women, our strong bodies have reproduced, I think we need a different word for it. And I apologize, if any of you are into the word mommy, I respect that, but it's not a word for me. So it was a mommy memoir, and in my mind, the way that I remember it was, like, it takes place in one of these hip towns, not Austin, but it's similarly, well, this will take place in Park Slope, even though that's not where it takes place. And like all the moms were at dance goes and like Lululemon shit, and they're all competitive with each other. And I just think, God, this is so not my world. Like I used to be hungover with my kid at Shed Park. I would be lucky if he'd be wearing a diaper. His choice, not mine. I mean, I bought him clothes, he didn't want to wear them. And so it's just like,
so was it different?
It was just
cultural.
It was just gross. It was like a
Yeah.
bunch of like rich, whiny white ladies, spiritual white women. I love that term. It was a bunch of like spiritual white women, like having this angst because they had an argument with their husband about whatever, the flatware. It's just like so fucking pretentious.
This book.
Whew, you
this
can
book
tell
did
this
well.
is a topic that it did do well. And that's another thing, professional fucking jealousy. I
Yeah.
try not to have it, but when somebody puts out like it felt fake, okay?
Yeah.
There you go. If it feels fake, I don't want to read it. Yeah.
Okay. That's great.
Whew, I feel like I'm breaking out in sweat here.
Oh. Okay, we're on to the more healing portion. And when I said healing in this topic, I was really kind of like, oh gosh, I don't know if I should be using this word. Because I don't know personally if I believe that writing can be healing. I'll just put it out there.
Okay.
I don't.
I feel
Sometimes
like you
I-
relieved me of something. Yeah.
I go back and forth. Sometimes I think maybe it is. Sometimes I think it's not. It's just time. Time is the most healing thing for me in my personal writing life that has been the thing that's helped me. That and actually poetry, because for me, memoir writing has so far not.
This is funny. I'm like, oh god, now I'm gonna have to change my marketing for my workshop.
No, but I
no.
but
Here, I do. I have it. No, finish the question, and I think I might have an answer
I
for
think
you.
it's really important. Okay. Yeah. So why do you believe that memoir writing is healing? I mean, I know you touched on this a little bit.
So, I give, as you already, this goes without saying, but let me just add it to lengthen the answer even more. I give extremely long answers to everything. Right? So I was having a conversation with my son recently, and I said something about his childhood, and he was like, I really don't have any other childhood to compare it to. Yes, it was weird, but I don't like, I mean, he could look outside at his friends' child, but he doesn't, that was his childhood, right? And so I say it's healing, partly because I've read that it's healing, and I think that it's healing, and I only have my own life. I can't compare it to, I can't go back and live a second life like a la sliding doors and not allow myself to write and then compare the two results. You could be right, it could be time more than anything. I think having a place for a voice, since I wasn't allowed to have a voice in my childhood home, I think, I am not remotely joking when I say this. I feel like being able to write and have a place to put my voice kept me from killing myself. I'm not saying like one night I was sitting there holding my gun and then I thought, well, I'll just do a journal entry instead. I don't mean that. I mean over the long, thank you, Stephanie. That was meant to be funny.
Yeah,
I was
it's funny.
No, it is. I'm fine with joking. I mean, suicide is a very serious issue, but having suffered from suicidal ideation a lot, I think we all need to talk about it more and not stigmatize talking about it. So I don't have two different lives that I can compare to each other, but I think being able to take all these thoughts and feelings that I perseverate on and put them down is healing. And then something that happens in workshop, whether we're reading to each other inside of a room where we have, confidentiality, or we do public readings at the Hyde Park Theater, I love it. I love it to watch this instant transformation when somebody reads a piece, especially a newcomer to workshop, and it's like, I'm afraid to read this, I'm afraid, you guys are going to think I'm crazy, or their voice is shaking, and then you know that's what's happening right now with all these social media posts. I do think that many of these women who are just bursting out with these stories of assault and stuff, it's lived. I used to teach little kids. I used to be a guest speaker in schools before, the parents caught on. And I would say to little kids, I'd say, okay, who's the fastest kid in the room? And they would, they'd always tell me, and I would say, okay, well, if I got in a 100-yard race with you, who would win, me or you? And this is back like when I used to walk with a cane, right? So that I have a visual prop. They're like, oh, miss, I'll win. I said, okay, now, if I give you a 400-pound boulder and you have to carry that, now we're going to have a race, who's going to win? And so I just use that to say to them, like, when you're carrying inside something, trauma, childhood abuse, incest, whatever's going on, and you're carrying that, they do have studies, more you mean my studies again, that show it'll make you sick. I mean, it'll make you physically sick. So I think it could actually be physically healing, and that's what some of Pennebaker's work shows too, is to put down the boulder randomly. I just want to throw in there that the other night I came home. I have 4 dogs now. I had 2, now I have 4. And then the 2 latest, a friend of mine died, and I adopted his dogs, and one's a puppy that ruins everything. He shits on my pillow. And the other one is 15 and a half years old and hates everybody. Plus I have my 2 dogs. So it's really fun. And Polly Jean is the puppy. She has destroyed everything. I mean, it's case in point. Like, I'm wearing an example of what she's destroyed. And so I have that which she has not destroyed, I have mostly cleared out of my room. Instead of getting a crate for her, I have a very tiny room next to my room, and I've turned it into a crate for myself. So I go there to get away from her. But anyway, so I came home the other night, and despite my best efforts, I saw some paper scattered on the floor. Very odd. I mean, not that odd, but what was odd was what was on the paper, what was written on the paper. She found a journal that I didn't remember keeping. It was from the entries were from March 2007. She had pulled out 3 or 4 pages from March 2007, and it was a list of all the sexual trauma, assault, and rape that I have experienced in my life. And this she pulled out during these hearings and left them on the floor. And I thought, symbolism. I read it, I was like, oh God. And I threw it away. I'm like, I'm just going to throw this part of my life away. So, but going back to your side of the argument, we could say this. I haven't healed from those things, or I'm not fully.
Yeah.
So maybe I'm just making it worse by writing it down. I don't know.
Well, I would ask, well, I would say that I have to revise that a little bit, because I know that as a reader, I've read memoirs that have been incredibly important to me, and that I can say for sure were healing.
As yours will be for others.
Well, and I was wondering if you've had an interaction with a reader who has spoken to you about your work and said, in a way, like, your work helped me.
I am so glad you brought this up. Because that really long bullshit answer I just gave that didn't really even address your question, I don't think. I'm so glad you said that. So yes, and I'm going to give you some specific examples, but protect identity. And then, wait, come on, Spike, get back to this thought here. Oh man, just give me a second here. Oh, okay, got it. In workshop, in front of a bunch of old white dude senators at the Hyde Park Theater, wherever we're telling our story, when we have a story, and let's face it, most memoirs have some traumatic events in them. Like, I saw an installation once at the American Visionary Art Museum, and it was Heaven and Hell. And someone in my group pointed out, heaven was very boring. Like, who cares? Hell is like textured and rich and filled with drama, right? So most memoirs. To be believed, I spent my whole life being told I was a piece of shit my whole childhood. Okay, it's a lie that I didn't want to believe, and I got on a loop. So I write these books, and then people come and they say, we believe you. It's a very powerful experience. It's also scary, and it's also weird because even though it feels really good to be believed, then you're like, no, they can't be right. Like it's such, your brain is so divided between, but they told me I was a piece of shit, and I decried it, and now you're saying I'm not, which is like what I wanted to hear, but no, wait, but these were the people that raised me. They told me the truth. It gets very, very confusing. I get mail all the time. Like, not a week passes that I don't get reader mail. And when I started doing emotionalrapesurvivor.com, I started a monthly dinner for women survivors of narcissistic abuse and emotional trauma. And I was going to end those dinners because, well, time management, and because I'm feeling a lot better. I work very intensely with my trauma specialist. I go to 12-step meetings. I'm feeling better, and I thought, I'm just going to wind down these meetings. And as soon as I think that, I get like 10 emails from people saying, and this breaks my heart. I get letters primarily from women, not always women, but just saying like, I've been raped, I've been beaten, I've been bullied. If I ever said this story out loud or wrote it down, like my husband will beat me more, I'll lose my kids, or I'll lose my job, or my family won't talk to me. And I have a lot of people who say to me, you're so courageous for telling your story. And I'm not being falsely modest here. I sometimes think I just don't have the same filters, right, as other people. And I said this in workshop the other day, and someone said, no, it's still courageous because there's a lot of stigma around telling your story, anyone telling your story, so that because the stigma remains, when you cross that line and say, I don't give a shit about your stigma, I'm going to tell you what happened to me, that's courageous. We could argue that point back and forth, I don't care. Whatever the case is, because I have nothing to lose, my family is not going to kick me out for telling stories because they already did that. So I'm free. And I tell these stories, and I get letters, like the most heartbreaking letters. People say to me, this happened to me when I was 5 years old, and I have never told anybody. And that's as far as I'm going to go. And if anybody's listening in the home viewing audience and think that I'm referring to you specifically, I'm probably not. I'm probably referring to somebody else who wrote and told me that. Yeah. Am I shouting, Julie? I'm very excited about this. I'm pretty passionate on the topic.
Yeah, that's very important. Okay, you talked about some of your things that help kick you into gear. This is more like advice for writers. What do you think it takes to be a great memoirist?
Well, I used to tell people, write like everybody's dead. I used to be very cavalier and just say, I just don't give a fuck. Just who cares, And then I read that this quote just drives me bonkers. I used to love Anne Lamott, and she went too far around the Jesus bend for me. And I apologize if you all love Jesus. I do love Jesus, but I don't want to fill my essays with like holier than thou crap. Right. So anyway, but I used to love Anne Lamott. Now she drives me nuts, and she's got that meme that goes around like every few months, and it's like, well, if people didn't want you to write about them that way, they should have behaved better. And I'm like, oh my God, if that applied to me, like that quote, which is like such a quip, it doesn't allow for this notion that people do work on themselves, try to redeem themselves, make amends, improve their lives. This whole we're greater than the sum of our parts kind of a thing, So once again, I'm not answering your question. I want to say to people, just cross that threshold, forget about the stigma, tell your story. But it does get more complicated. I remember my brother said to me early on in my writing career, I've had the same name. My last name is the same last name as on my birth certificate. I see no need to change it. And he'd be like, well, my kids have your last name, and you better watch what you write. That was just a challenge to me. Like, you're not the boss of me. I'm thinking this example is popping into my head where I was teaching memoir writing or journal writing at the spa. I used to teach at this fancy spa. And I used to say, who cares? Like, people were worried if I write a journal and I die and somebody reads it, it's going to fuck everything up. I'm like, you're dead. Who cares? And then someone gave this example of growing up in this small town, I think in Canada, where this woman dies and her journals reveal that she'd had an affair with the neighbor's husband. And it hurt a lot of people. So I can't answer your question. The older I get, I am a little more careful. Mm-hmm. And I definitely write a lot less about my son. Like, you'll see references galore to my son, but you will not catch me quoting him very often because I know it is his desire to not be quoted. Mm-hmm. And my love and respect for him, I can't say that word anymore, sorry, overrules, I almost said that TR word. I don't need to, his story is his story, right? So I'm a little more careful now. What about you? What do you think makes it good?
Wow. Longevity. I think that, like any other book, I don't think that memoir should be exempt from the same things that keeps a great work of fiction or a great book of poem alive for a long time. And I think that I'm always trying to think about whether or not the story I'm telling is fundamentally a good story, or if it's just a series of vignettes about shitty things.
I think you just described all my books. I'm serious. I think I write vignettes about shitty things.
But it's important because it is important to write about all of that. But ultimately, I don't think that's true. I think you have a good story.
Okay, I wasn't fishing. I wasn't. I'm just saying I write rapidly, and it's like
you know what a good story is. In fact, like, Spike gave me the best writing advice. I
did.
Yeah. So this was how, if you're stuck on like what kind of essay or what kind of book you want to write the story that you would tell or have been telling.
Oh, the cocktail party
friends
story.
Or family. These are stories that get repeated. Like, if you're just met someone, these are the bonding stories that you tell when you're just making a friend. Like, these are the stories that are like, they're road tested. They're road tested. They have all the elements.
Can we just I want to give a couple quick examples. I mean, do you want to give me an example? Give me a short example of one of your cocktails. Can I turn the tables on you here?
Of my own cocktail?
Yeah, just tell us a cocktail part, like one of your vignettes, one of your tried and true. Do you mind that I'm putting you on the spot?
Oh, the story I have is actually really terrible.
Okay.
But let's do this. Okay. So this is a story about how my stepfather died.
Oh, terrible.
Okay, maybe not.
No, let's hear it. I mean, if you're fine with telling it, I wasn't judging. I wasn't saying terrible like that's terrible of you to say that. I'm just saying it sounds like it's a terribly sad story.
It is, but I think what makes it an interesting story is that there are things in this story that don't quite connect and that leave me wondering. So apparently he committed suicide, but before he committed suicide, maybe I shouldn't be doing this seems like it's not a good road.
You can edit out. You can stop if you want, but you can.
Yeah. Okay. Well, maybe I should go for another.
I'll tell a quick one while you're thinking.
Yeah.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
So I was going to tell like a super light story. It's rare for me, super light. But so I was in Galveston, which I've been going to Galveston for, I don't know, many years, decades. And I had Henry, and we were staying at my friend's garage apartment down an alley, and I was loading out to head back to Austin, and I think I was driving the Toyota Cressida. See, it's weird. And I can tell you that Cressida, before someone gave it to me, was in the bottom of a lake, because some kids stole it and drove it in a lake. But that has nothing to do with the story. So the Cressida also was kind of like the Mercedes of its day for poor people, or less rich people. So the Cressida's in the alley in Galveston, and I've got the passenger, like the shotgun door open, and I'm loading stuff in, and I suddenly feel this extreme pain in my feet and legs, and I look down, and I've got fire ants all over me, which is bad for anybody, you know. And I'm sorry, I'm making myself be the oh, poor me, but I am actually severely allergic to insect bites. So I'm not just in pain, I'm freaking out that I'm covering it. So I scream and I'm batting them away, and then I fall back into the seat because the door's open, and then I feel this extreme pain in my ass on the seat of the car in a paper bag. I had purchased one of those dried blowfish from one of those souvenir stores. So I got ants on my legs, I got a blowfish up my ass, and I'm just in screaming agony. I think that's karma. I mean, I thought it was wrong for me to buy that. So, I mean, we have bigger cocktail stories, but that just popped in my head.
No, but anyway, so that is the best advice. Take those stories that you would tell and write about those, because those are the ones that will roll off easily. And
Take dictation. You just take dictation.
So we'll go ahead and end there and open it up to audience.
Something, you know, like your favorite musician or your favorite, what you don't like to eat or whatever. And this Friday we did childhood memory.
Wow.
And it was really funny the way that people would, you know, some people, you know, have a lot of funny stories and, you know, they really want to share, and then some people, nothing. They didn't want to share. So it was, to me, it was very interesting, the dynamics. I mean, talking about a small group, it was like 10 to 12 people. But that really, even just that topic seemed to open up a lot of, you know.
It made some people stressed out.
Yeah, you could tell.
Did you share?
Yeah, I did actually. I mean, there's a lot of stuff in my family, but then I had a lot of good stuff too. So it's kind of, you know, hit or miss. And I think everybody does. I think that's just normal. I don't think there's anyone really that's never had any trauma in their life, or I don't think you're really normal if you haven't.
I agree.
But anyway, yeah, so it was very interesting. You had some people that just, you know, could just told story after story, and everybody thought, okay, you know, but then some people just really didn't, it's like they didn't want to be there. So yeah, anyway, I thought that was interesting.
There are people that do not want to tell their stories. I think my son's one of them. The most cutting line. My son really, I love him so much. He really, no one can call me on my bullshit faster than he can. One time I handed him one of my books. I think it was one of my quilting books. He's like, oh, your fiction, or whatever. He's like, or no, I lived it. No, she's like, I lived it. So he said, oh shit, what was I gonna? Oh, one time he goes to me. I just want to let you know I win all the story contest in bars about childhood.
Wow,
I think he was kidding. I don't know, whatever. Yeah, that's a good one.
Any last questions?
Are any of you memoir writers? I know, Carol, you do some writing.
Yes.
Yeah, you're not going to tell us.
I dabbled.
All right. Well, thank you so much for coming out tonight.
Thank you all. This was very fun, and I love running my mouth. So I just thank you so much.
Thank you.
I really appreciate it. Thank you. And there's snacks.
We have snacks.
Snacks.
And Spike's latest book is
And my book is
available
there
for sale.
too, and my skirt's kind of riding. I got the skirt at a thrift store, and now I know why someone gave it away. Thank you, Facebook people. See you tomorrow. I'll be back to complaining about all the bullshit going on with the Supreme Court. Have a